Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā ki me kena ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi a ki ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauriora.
Hello, I am Beth Sarmiento, and I am the New A's RMO consultant, recruitment consultant. And I would like to welcome everyone for today's webinar. And it's hosted by A's RMO and co-hosted by Palmerston North. I just want to discuss some important guidelines or important points as we go along with the webinar flow. So in today's webinar, it is split into 3 parts. So first part would be the employer's presentation, where the employer has to discuss how the hiring process, the assessment process, ranking process, training opportunities available for the hospital, whether they hold interviews or not and on-site, rostering allocations, and they will also discuss how is it like to be for an RMO to work in their hospital or in their district. So second part would be RMO discussing their first-hand experience working in that hospital, taking into consideration their experiences on their onboarding, the paperwork that they need to prepare before starting, the support and pastoral care, everything that has something to do with how their experience was working in Palmerston North. And then third would be the question and answer portion. For the question and answer live session, we encourage everyone, if they would like to ask questions live, they can just use the raise hand function in the Zoom. And then if they would just like to put in some of their questions, they can also use the Q&A function in Zoom. Now, if they have a question specific to their cases or to their situation, I suggest and I recommend that it would be best to send an email to ACE RMO so that we would be able to answer them in a more comprehensive manner. I would like to turn the floor or give the floor to the panelists to introduce themselves.
Good, welcome. I'm Christine Wood. I'm the manager of our medical administration unit. We're probably not going to be quite as formally structured as what Beth has suggested. We're just going to go through our slides together, talk a little bit about the different things that make our district and our region a really nice place to come and live and work. And then, as Beth has said, there'll be time for some questions at the end.
Kia ora, I'm Regan. I'm one of the PGY1s here. So I'm originally from Wanganui, so fairly close to home, but not quite. I studied at Otago Uni and then went to Christchurch for my clinical years and then found myself here.
Kia ora, ko Mania Grey-Brighton tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no Ngāti Kahangunu, Ngāpuhi Waihoki no Rongamai Wāhine. I am a PGY1. I did my TI here last year, and yeah, glad to be able to talk to you guys.
Kia ora, ko Janine Stevens tōku ingoa, ko Taranaki te Maia, ko Tainui te Waka, ko Taranaki te Iwi, ko Ngāti Haungia te Hapu. Kia ora koutou, lovely to have you here. I'm a public health physician here at Mid Central. I'm also the Director of Medical Training and I'm one of 6 PESers that work here. So nice to see you all.
Okay. So as I said, as part of my introduction, we think that Palmerston North City is one of New Zealand's best kept secrets. There are some amazing things that you can do in the region, and we think that it's a good idea for you to come and explore this area for your PGY1 and beyond. We've just got a few pictures to show you of our beautiful region, which Beth is just slowly clicking through. We may not be coastal, but it's only half an hour to the nearest beaches, and we've also got a beautiful bridle path along our river from Ashurst all the way through to Linton now, I think, more or less. So quite an extensive bridle path. It's a little bit windy, so we have turbines. And this is our hospital. So what do we offer? Palmerston North City is located at the heart of the Manawatu in the lower North Island. So we're about an hour and a half drive to Wellington now, a couple of hours over to the Hawke's Bay, an hour and a half down to the Wairarapa, probably closer to 3 hours up to New Plymouth in Taranaki, and a couple of hours to the centre of the North Island, so Mount Ruapehu and Lake Taupo. So we are a great place to live because it's really easy to get around. You can live on the other side of the city and it only takes you 15 to 20 minutes to get to work. I'm sure Regan and Mahi will talk a little bit more about what it's like living in Palmy, but if you have to stop at 2 traffic lights on your way to work, you think you've had a bad day. So unlike people who are living in bigger cities, it's really, really easy to get around and lots of good activities and things to do on your downtime. Some more scenery. Interestingly enough, Palmy boasts more cafes and restaurants per head of population than anywhere else in New Zealand, and there's a wide range of different food that's available in the city as well. So there's always something new to go and something new to try if you want to go out for a meal or have a few drinks. No traffic jams, which I've already talked about. Flat. The central city is flat. There are hills surrounding us, so great for biking or walking to work, but there's also mountain bike trails up the back. There's lots of tramping tracks and things as well, lots of gyms. The airport is literally 5-minute drive from the hospital, so if you're wanting to fly somewhere on the weekend. And it's still cheap enough to buy houses. And I'm not sure if any of our current first years have bought houses yet, but certainly over the last couple of years, a number of our first years have bought houses in the city during their first year. Some nice places to eat and drink. So just a little bit about our region. It's quite a large district. And so it covers from Peka Peka in the south to Apiti in the north, and we go from the Tasman Sea across to the Pacific Ocean. It'd be nice if we went to the Pacific Island. To the Pacific Ocean. So on our eastern boundary, we're right over to the Pacific Ocean coast. We've got about 350 beds, and we provide most clinical services with the exception of plastics, cardiothoracic and neurosurgery. And we are also a tertiary centre for cancer, and some of our house officers have been really enjoying the opportunity to do some radiation oncology, haematology and medical oncology. Even in their first year, some of them have been doing it, and certainly in their second year. So it gives quite a breadth of opportunity for a medium-sized, what is predominantly a secondary level hospital, having that tertiary service. We have about 170 SMOs and 180 RMOs, a mix of house officers and registrars. I'm sure the RMOs will talk a little bit more about this, but it's a really collegial place to work. And you get to know your SMO and your registrar really well, so you don't have that sense of feeling like you don't know who to go to if you've got problems, or who to talk to about things. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, you guys, in terms of day-to-day work, how you find that? Oh, sorry, do you just want to go, that's fine, we
can add a lot there.
Okay, you
yeah.
Okay, so we'll just talk about some of the runs that we've got available. So in PGY 1, all the general things you'd expect: general surgery, orthopaedics, urology, general medicine, ENT ophthalmology, geriatric medicine, respiratory, and from quarter 4 you can do obstetrics and gynecology. Psychiatry, it says there from quarter 4, but actually we would let people go to psychiatry earlier than that if they have an interest. And likewise, we now have a gastroenterology house officer position, and we don't normally put first years in their first quarter into cardiology, but you could certainly look at doing cardiology later in the year if that was a particular interest. And then into PGY2, in addition to those runs, we also have a medical education house officer position. That's been in place now for just over a year. It's a 0.5 position, and they basically support our house officer teaching program. They help with the development of it. They hold your pages when you come to teaching, so it's making teaching much more protected than it was prior to having that position. They're there to support people, so if we have someone who's struggling a little bit on their run, we will often ask the medical education house officer to support them. If we've got people coming in new, etc. And that the other 0.5 of that position is usually either medical or surgical relief. So it's a choice of the person, but we find that works best. We haven't been able to double it with another, with a run like ONG or PEDS, because they're really busy runs, and certainly wouldn't be able to be half with ED, because that would not be very practical. However, we did have one of our medical education house officers who just did the medical education and was a 0.5 position, so it doesn't have to be a full-time position. As I mentioned before, sorry, if you just go back, Beth, I've just mentioned before, we have paediatrics, which you can do from the second half of your PGY2 year, and then haematology, radiation oncology, medical oncology, renal, and we've got a good range of community-based attachments. We've got several different general practices. We've got a St John ambulance run, which we started again just over a year ago and has been very popular. So basically you're attached to an ambulance team and you spend a quarter out attached to the team, going to the emergencies as they present, going to all the things that the ambulance team goes to, doing the shifts that they do, and also hospice, which includes a little bit of time in our inpatient palliative care service as well. And once you get up to PGY3, we have ICU SHO positions. They're also really popular, and they support people really well, particularly if they're wanting to get into either ICU training or into anaesthetics. Quite a number of our ICU SHOs then successfully get onto training for anaesthesia. And of course, you can apply for other registrar roles. So from PGY3 onwards, if you're interested, you could be looking at being a non-training surgical reg. You could apply for medical registrar training. You could look at, if you've done ONG as a house officer, you could look at ONG registrar, and also paediatrics. If you've done that as a house officer, you would be able to apply for paediatric registrar training as well. And likewise mental health, so psychiatry. So there's some really good opportunities once you get to PGY3 to get into some training or non-training registrar positions. So just some of the practical stuff from our point of view. We really do like a cover letter, and especially specifically for us, saying why it is that you're attracted to coming to Palmerston North. You know, maybe you've got family and friends here, maybe your family's in Wellington and you want to be closer to home, but you want to be in a medium-sized hospital rather than a really large city hospital. Maybe it's just that it's, you know, you're attracted to the sorts of runs that you can do here. We had someone come here this year because they want to do pathology, and we're looking at a way that they can get into pathology training from their PGY3 year onwards, and supporting them to do the runs they need to do during their PGY2 year. So those are sorts of things that are good to put in your application letter. CV, we want to know who you are as a person. You know, at the end of the day, you're all going to be coming out with a medical degree. So we want to know a little bit more about you, what you like to do in your downtime, holiday jobs that you've had, or part-time jobs, if you've got a degree already, what that degree's in, and what you do to keep your work-life balance. You know, it's really important. It's a big year being a PGY1, and so we want to know that you've got some things that you do out of work so that you don't go completely crazy and that you've got some de-stressing mechanisms in place. So those sorts of things we like to see in your CV. We don't interview, but we do welcome visits or phone calls. So feel free to either ring. I can set up a Zoom to have a Zoom call with you. I'm happy to include other house officers in that as well, or feel free to come for a visit. And as long as you're coming Monday to Friday, I'll make every effort that I can for me or one of my team to be available. And then we also try and work really hard so that we can match you up with one of our house officers and they can, you know, tell you what it's really like to be here, and give you a bit of an idea of what day-to-day works like in a way that we are not really, you know, as RMO unit, not able to do quite the same. And they will often take you for a bit of a look around the hospital as well. So yeah, and we are also open to part-time, but we would want to have some conversations about what that would be, what you would be thinking you wanted as a part-timer, before we receive your application through ACE, because then we kind of, when we get that application for part-time work, we're aware that that's something already that you're wanting to be considered for. Do you guys want to talk about some of this stuff?
Trees.
Yeah, cool. The teaching program here is really good. So it's Tuesday and Friday from usually 12 to 1, so it's just an hour. You usually come along, bring your lunch. I feel like I've almost learned more this year through the teaching program than I did as a TI, because it's actually relevant to your practice. So all the stuff you learn, so you learn a bit of psych stuff, you know, a little bit of sort of acute emergencies, but you're actually living in that, so it just sticks so much easier. So I feel like I've come further already this year. It's been, 3 months compared to probably my whole TI year. So teaching sessions are like very highly encouraged, but not compulsory. So if you're busy on the day, you know, there's no stress, you don't have to come. But yeah, it's also a good chance just to sort of debrief for the week with your fellow PGY1s and kind of just get a little bit of mental health support from the PGY1 who runs the medical sort of program, and just sort of debrief on a lot of stuff during those times. Anything to add on that?
And our teaching program we've tried to develop, because we do have training interns here, as Maria said, she was a training intern here. And so we have, our PGY 1s and 2s support the training intern teaching program, and we try to have it so that the program is staircase, so that the stuff that you're learning in training intern year, if you're here, is built on for PGY 1, and then our PGY 2 teaching builds on that again. And looking at the different things you need. So the focus very much in the first part of the year for PGY1s is, what do I really need to know to do my job on a day-to-day basis, because that's the stuff you really need. As we move towards the end of the year, the program's a bit more focused on the sorts of things you might need for going into PGY2. And then the PGY2 teaching program is a little bit more focused on I guess the sorts of tools and things that you need in terms of next steps for PGY3, but also giving you exposure to some of the runs that you may not have done. So having some specific teaching by the emergency department, obstetrics and gynecology, paediatrics, general practice, so that you get a little bit more knowledge about some of those areas, as I say, that you may not have worked in, but you want to know a little bit more about. And you know, the bottom line is that no matter what you decide to do longer term in your medical career, it's actually really good to have a well-rounded understanding of all the different areas of medicine, because, you know, you might be working in psychiatry but have a pregnant woman and some issues that you need to be aware of, or you might be working in, there was a really good example someone gave me the other day. So working in neurology, for example, with some slightly different parts of medicine that you learn about doing a subspec like that. However, in any run, you might have someone who presents with some neurological problems, so it's good to have some of that sort of teaching as part of your program as well. And Janine, who is here with us today, is our Pairs Māori, and so although she doesn't necessarily have all our young Māori interns as her interns, she's certainly available for cultural support and cultural guidance, and you know, the opportunity is there for, you know.
Yeah, and whilst I'd love to be the peers for all of our Māori interns, we've been very fortunate to have a reasonably large number of Māori interns come through, so it hasn't always been possible. Before COVID, I was embedded within the Paiora Māori Health Directorate team, so I also have really good relationships with our tikanga facilitators and other clinical staff within that Māori team. So what I can't provide, I can connect people to that cultural support on an individual basis, whatever is needed. But yeah, so kia ora.
So there's some slightly quirky things about Palmerston North, and there was someone I was speaking to recently who was keen to come here specifically because of the fact that we have more malignant hyperthermia patients here than anywhere else in the country, and we run the MH testing program through here as well. And it's because there's a family, a Māori family in the Otaki region who have the gene, and so it's really important to that we do the testing here, and anyone that presents is asked whether they whakapapa to that family so that we know that people are getting the right care. So orientation, you guys want to talk a little bit about orientation, how you found it? Oh,
Probably not. We had an interesting start to orientation. So in our first week, it was a lot of kind of just meeting everyone, and you go, so meet our PESers, meet the PGY2s. Actually, it's probably better from you because I'm not new to the place.
That's good. Yeah, I'll carry on from that. Yeah, so basically the first week, you've got a lot of sort of support that's lathered on you pretty.
Sorry, we just dropped off. Hopefully everybody has come back. I don't know what happened there. So sorry, Regan, you were just going to talk about orientation.
Absolutely, yeah. So on the orientation week, you meet your peer supervisor, who's kind of your consultant, who'll see you throughout the year, and you can sort of refer to for any support for anything, really, absolutely anything. They're very sort of welcome you with open arms. I wouldn't feel like there's anything that I couldn't approach them about any situation, really, so it's really good. Probably I'd say one of the most important parts is meeting your fellow PGY1s. So you in the week you're split between the team who's studying on the surgical runs and the medical runs, and you basically do everything with them for them. So yeah, I think both of our sides at a BYO at the end of the week, had a few drinks together, all that stuff, really got to know each other well, so it kind of started the year off on the right foot. But then also during that week, you kind of know the essentials. So you learn the hospital system, which I think is pretty important. So it probably took about a week to get to know the Palmerston North system, just kind of coming from Christchurch, I guess a lot more things are on paper. That's actually the same, but kind of just getting to know. Yes, but it's actually a very, very easily run system, and you get to grips with it very quickly. Learning the essentials like MET calls, which I hadn't really known much about. And also, yeah, one of the coolest things is the learning vascular access with ultrasound. It's something I've never really done or seen at all in Christchurch. So you get a good session on that, and it really makes you more comfortable knowing that if you're struggling with IV lines, there are sort of steps you can take with ultrasound which make it a lot easier to succeed in those. And also you do a buddy shift with a PGY2. And they also just give you the lowdown on everything. It's really, really, really helpful. Yeah.
So I guess this is probably one we can talk about a bit together in terms of some of the things that you learn on your runs. You've all both just finished your first run and you were both on surgical runs, but how did you find those runs went, and what do you think were the learning opportunities on them?
So having been here as a TI, I think I was really lucky to already know all of the basics, know the hospital and know a lot of the people. But then we had new registrars and stuff come through as well. Me and my flatmates talked about how when you go anywhere for work is where you actually spend the most time. And so what you do outside of that time, yeah, it's important, but it's important to find a place that you enjoy working. And I think Palmerston North definitely has a hospital that you enjoy working at because of the people. So our registrars were really supportive, and on Gen Search you get a lot of experience that you wouldn't get in the bigger centres, like getting to go to skin clinics or even scrubbing into theatre, and you're doing some minor operations not on your own, well, doing them, but with your registrar there to support you as well. It was a very supportive, what's the thing called? Run, I think.
Yeah. I think I was absolutely dreading studying on general surgery because I'm more sort of GP psych minded, not very surgical minded. So I was absolutely like, oh no, what's going to happen? But I think the most immediate thing I noticed was how much flatter the hierarchy is here compared to a lot of the bigger hospitals.
Yeah.
So I think like on my first day, my consultant like held the door open for me and asked how I was. I was like, wait, what? You're like talking to me? And so it was just such an immediate sort of transition to what I thought kind of the surgery life in particular was like. There's such a good ratio of SMOs to RMOs here that you're always supported by an SMO, especially on surgery, and you've also got the regis to call on if needed. If you're not surgically minded, like it's not such a small hospital that you're needed in theatre to help. Like you've got the opportunity to go, and they welcome that with open arms. But if you're not surgically minded, you don't have to go to theatre and help. But you can do like minor op clinics, as Mahi was saying, and such as well, and help on the ward. So there's good sort of opportunity to tailor your surgical run to sort of how you want to kind of lead your future into, I guess, yeah.
Speaking on the like hierarchy thing again, Regan and I would do quiz night every Wednesday with like our registrars and brought along our consultant a few times as well. So it's, yeah, you get to spend a lot more time with people outside of work, so then you feel more comfortable with them in work as well.
Yeah, like I knew one of my weaknesses coming in was kind of like referring on the phone, talking to people, but I think I've been here 3 months and already half the people I have to refer to, I've already got the number, I'm seeing the netball lady at night, so I'm like, oh hey buddy, how's it doing, how's the netball, blah blah blah, oh yeah, by the way, got this patient. So it's just a way more friendlier sort of environment, You don't feel judged, it's very supportive. Yeah.
Oh. And some of the things that I guess are good, sorry, Beth, can you just go back a sec, for some of the runs that you can do a little bit later on, which I talked about a little bit before, but O&G, you can do the O&G diploma, which is great if you're intending either to do obstetrics and gynecology or if you're looking at general practice. And likewise with paediatrics, irrespective of whether you're looking at the paediatrics as a career or whether you're looking at general practice, you can do the PEDS diploma. Talked already about the ICU job, which gives you a great opportunity to move on either into ICU training or anaesthesia training. ED is a very supported run. Our ED is busy and people are finding that they're busy when they're in ED, but they're actually also finding that they're getting lots and lots of really good experience. And a few of our people have done the St John run and then gone into ED, and they found that combination is working really well because it's giving them the opportunity to see the emergencies before they get to the department and then manage them, when they go to ED, manage them when they go to the department. But the consultants are there apart from midnight to 7 when the consultant is on call, and there's always a more senior person in ED irrespective, so you wouldn't be a house officer on your own in ED. We have 4 on most nights of the week now. There's 3 RMOs on from midnight till 7 on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but the other nights of the week there's 4, and at least one of them will be either a registrar or a very senior house officer. But during the day through till midnight, there's a consultant in the department, so they expect you to come and tell them about your cases. They expect you to be talking to them about what you think's going on and what your plan is, all of that sort of stuff.
I guess the other thing to say about ED is that they have a really good teaching program. And it's truly protected teaching program for RMOs, so registrars as well as house officers. And the consultants take the floor and work on the floor so that the RMOs can leave and go and have truly protected teaching time, things that are relevant to ED and the interns.
Scenarios.
The interns that I supervise as their peers have all talked about ED being challenging. It's busy, like Christine has said, but they said they have never learned so much and in that sort of environment before, and they do talk about the teaching program being really good.
And as we talked about before, the medical education house officer position is a really good position for someone who's got an interest in medical education and teaching. And there's lots of practical opportunities in all of the runs. Regan's only been on respiratory since Monday, and he was already telling me he's learned how to do
ABGs and such. Never had to touch one in Christchurch, whereas here you're sort of doing them daily. And just, lots of things that in bigger hospitals you kind of do once off, like catheterization, like you do it pretty regularly here, ABGs, that sort of stuff. I learned how to do like pleural aspirations pretty soon. Yeah, you don't really get that in a lot of big hospitals.
And we're really supportive. And in your first year, we encourage you to focus on becoming a good doctor. And so we don't encourage people to do any external courses and things in their first year, especially not in the first part of it. But towards the end of the year, if you were going to ED, for example, we'd be looking at supporting you to do basic. As I say, we encourage people in their second year, if they're doing OMG or PEDS, to do the relevant diplomas. And we work really hard to make sure that you get the appropriate learning opportunities to set you up for your future career. So we have people who would be doing the GSSE courses in their second year because they're planning to sit GSSE either in their second year or in their third year. So we support them to do the relevant courses for that, etc., etc. So we've already talked a little bit about teaching. And then, so there's the projected teaching for PGY1s and PGY2s, but as we've already talked about, other departments have their own teaching programs too. So ED has an exceptional teaching program, but most of the departments will have their own teaching in addition. And then there's the bigger forums like grand rounds for medicine, surgical meeting for surgery, etc. And people are expected both to attend but also to present, so you'll get opportunities for presenting in those forums as well.
Free lunches as well for those.
And this is the one that we are still probably working on, I'd have to say, because last year again was disrupted with COVID. So the plan for our cultural competency is that when people are doing their community-based attachment, they will do our 2-day Treaty of Waitangi program, and then the cultural competencies changed a little bit this year, so we just need to be working on how we embed that into the teaching programs as well.
It used to be a single day course that, again, when you were in your community-based attachment, you'd be released for a day to attend, but our Māori Directorate has changed the way they do that to try and encourage more people to be able to come. A lot of clinical staff find it difficult to get off a ward for a whole day to attend these sorts of courses, so it has been changed, and we'll look at how we can sort of integrate that back in.
So this is the RMO, some photos of our RMO lounge and the study area and the sleeping beds. So once you're doing nights, if you have a quieter night, you are able to sleep. And so there's 3 beds in a quiet room, which has got blinds down. It's kind of at the back end of the RMO lounge. So if you look at the one where you can see the lockers on the left, the RMO sleeping room, you go out the back door there, and it's all inside, but you go out the door there and into the sleeping area, so it's quite separate from the lounge. And then straight down through the lounge is the study area, which you can see here with the computers set up. There's about 12, 9, 10, 8.
Sounds like
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's a really good area there, which both for using for handover and staff getting your lists and things ready for handover, but also often we'll see registrars in particular in there during some quiet time doing some study. We've also got a really good clinical library, which is literally just upstairs from where the RMO lounge is. The RMO lounge itself has got a TV, it's got some sofas, it's got coffee and tea making facilities. And again, quite often we'll see a group of RMOs sitting in there at lunchtime having their lunch together, having a chat. The other morning, just before medicine handover, they thought that it was Friday afternoon and they were at the pub because they're all sitting around having a chat, and I'm like, aren't you going up to medicine handover this morning? Because they're all just look so relaxed, having a chat, etc., etc. And the other thing that's good to know, I think, from the point of view of people who are looking at coming here, is that the medical administration unit is just on the outside, so our office is just back out of the lounge. So we get to see you regularly, you get to see us regularly. It's never difficult to come and see us and talk talk about anything that's going on, be it things that are happening for you on your run or things that are happening for you in your personal life, but additionally for things like, when can I have some leave, or I've got something coming up and can I swap with someone and change what I'm doing this weekend, or those sorts of things. So we're really accessible. As an RMO unit, we see ourselves as very much being there to support all of our RMOs, but we're particularly mindful that our first and second years, it's a whole new world, being a doctor, being employed, working long days, working nights, etc. So we see that a big part of our role is supporting you in whatever way you need. So leave, that segued really nicely into that next thing. So it is important to give us as much notice as you can around leave, and what we encourage people to do is to think ahead. If you've got something big coming up, like your wedding or your best friend's wedding or your mum's 60th or something like that, let us know as soon as, and we quite reasonably expect once you're coming to Palmy, that you will want to let us know about those sorts of things that are coming up in 2024 as soon as you're coming to Palmy. So it's no problem to start applying for leave as soon as you know that you've been placed here. The earlier we know, the better. But equally, if you don't have a fixed time that you want, and people will quite often come in and see Lindy, who is the main person doing most of the rosters for our first years and most of our second years, they'll come in and say, oh look, I'd just quite like to have a bit of a break in June, and so you come in and Lindy will say, well, you could have this week here off, or maybe you could have a few days here or whatever. So we like to work really closely with you around leave, but as I say, do plan it yourself well in advance. Have a think before you even come here about when might I want to have a break, and think about it. The other thing to think about with leave is that you are encouraged. Medical Council sets sort of a benchmark of doing 10 out of the 13 weeks, and although there's a little bit of discretion from your pre-vocational educational supervisors, we encourage you not to be planning to take a 5-week block of leave, for example, in one quarter. We encourage you to think about having 2-ish weeks per quarter, because that then gives you a little bit of chance if you get sick, then you're not running over into taking too many weeks off. But equally though, if you did want to take a larger period of leave, plan it really early, but look at it crossing over between 2 quarters, because then you can potentially have, say, 2 weeks off at the end of one quarter, 1 week at the beginning of the next quarter, and you're getting a 3-week break, but you're not running that risk that you're going to then get COVID and be off, or get the flu really badly and be off and not meet the time requirements for your attachment.
And that's something that as a PES I always talk to my interns about every quarter is, what are your plans? Do you want some leave? Do you have any courses or things planned, so that we can, just for me to remind my interns to get in touch with MAU early, because the sooner you get in touch, the more likely it is that it will all work out. In saying that, sometimes people get it at very short notice when things happen, and it is really just about communicating and keeping talking, and it generally works pretty well.
Cafeteria?
Any comments?
Well, the food's all right, but we've had people from Waikato say that it's the best food they've ever eaten in their life. We don't have sushi. That's kind of, we don't have sushi. I think that's the only problem that I have with that.
We used to have sushi, but I wonder
Bring it
why we
back.
don't have sushi
We're going
now.
to start a petition.
You think it would be relatively healthy food options?
Yes, yes.
The other thing that's worth knowing for those of you that might be thinking that you're going to join Stones as a union is that we're part of the Stones pilot for a meal allowance. So what happens if you sign up to that is that you get a food allowance that's paid with your salary, and it's based on here I am not being able to tell you all the details, but it's based on an allowance amount, which is taxed, but you get it irrespective of whether you're at work or on leave or on sick leave. So it's not just paid based on the meals that you're having, it's based on the same amount every week for the entire 12-month period. And in addition to that, when you're on nights, you still get a night meal. So when you are a PGY 1 in the second half of the year and you're doing nights, you get a night meal as well as the Stones meal allowance. We have also, for individual circumstances, we will, for our RDA members or non-union members, we will also organise a meal allowance, because we've had a few people recently who find that the cafeteria food doesn't cater well to health conditions like celiacs. They can't guarantee the food is gluten-free, and also even for some people for their dietary preferences like vegetarian, vegan or religious needs. So that is an option that we will support you with if you think that that is going to be you. And that allowance is $13 per meal. So you get that, you put it on your timesheet. So if you've done a long day or you've done a weekend, you would get 2 meals for those days, and then but you don't get a meal on your rostered days off under that scenario. Do you want to talk about the social life? We had a really good RMO ball a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think Regan and I are both very social, and so we're able to participate in a lot of the activities. We play netball together on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then quiz night on Wednesdays, and then we might have a couple of days off, but it's an active social life in Palmerston North, and yeah, you really get to see quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I really rate the bar scene here. Like, I feel like and they're all very close as well. So you literally just like walk 2 minutes down the road and you're at like a really nice bar. Cheaper drinks here generally compared to like places like Christchurch and stuff. So yeah. And I guess because it's a smaller place and you get to know your peers a lot well, there's always someone who's up for a drink at the pub or something. I'm trying to get people to go to time zone. No one's keen on the time zone.
Every weekend.
we did organise the time
I can
zone.
lead you my grandchildren if you need. If you feel like you're too old to go on your own,
I do feel that. I need people
I'll just give
around.
you my grandkids. Which Janine's boys might be keen.
And there's also like with the registrars as well. It's not just us PGY ones. The PGY twos were already really good friends. If the regis, seats of them come with us and play sport and do whatnot. So yeah.
And I think some of that comes back to Palmerston North being so easy to do all of those things.
Yeah.
It's so quick to get there. You know, you might finish work a bit later than you expected, but you can still make it to your indoor netball game at 6 and things, because it's not far away.
No,
It's
nothing's far.
really
Yeah,
easy.
exactly. Yeah.
And I live in Fielding, which is a town about 15 minutes away. And we've got a few of our RMOs actually live out there. And again, very commutable. Like it takes me, it's 18 k's, it takes me 15 minutes to get from my front door to the front door of the hospital. And it's a little bit quieter, but it's still got some nice bars and restaurants and things as well. And if you are a mature student who's perhaps looking to come with a family, it's a really good city for young families. And there's lots of daycares, there's really good schools. There is a private primary school here, but most people put their children into the local state schools, including for secondary education. The schools are really good. And again, you're close enough that if your kids have got an after school sports practice, you can literally finish work and go and take them to their sports practice, all of those sorts of things. So it's a good place for younger people, but it's also a good place for families. And we are a university city, so we've got Massey University just across the river, plus the International Pacific College as well. And the international students are starting to come back now, so...
And there's a polytech right in the centre of town as well. So there's a lot of young people that live in the city.
And sporting wise, there's not much that Palmerston North doesn't cater for. So there's quite a few surfers amongst us. They just pop up to Taranaki for the weekends. Biking, there's so many nice tracks along the river and up along the hills. I'm looking at getting into canoe polo soon. And there's a canoe polo just down by the lagoon. Like it has really got everything. Yeah.
So salaries, this is the current salary scale for the RMOs on the RDA Mecca. Most of our runs are Cat Ds or Cat Cs in your first and second years, but if you go to O&G, that's a Cat B, I'm pretty sure. Relief is paid at Cat A for most runs. If you do relief, psychiatry is a Cat B, PEDS is a Cat B, general practice and the CBAs. If you do St John, that'll be paid at Cat C because it's a shift roster. ED's paid at Cat C because it's a shift roster. But if you go to general practice, you'll be on a Cat F. And that's something people just need to sort of build into their financial planning for the year, is that your salary will drop a little bit. However, we always offer for general practice RMOs to pick up long days and weekend shifts for us and stuff. Do you know what? Most of them don't. They worry that they're going to miss the money, but I think they enjoy the work-life balance and not having to do long days and not having to do the shift work aspects of the inpatient ward for, just for that quarter. And so, yeah, most of them are saying, yeah, we'll pick up shifts, and we're ringing, oh no, I've got plans. They're off to netball or the pub.
Yeah, they just enjoy having that certainty of working Monday to Friday, you know, I guess what you would call business type hours.
Yeah.
Oh, this is something that I'm quite passionate about. So when we moved into our flat in Palmy, our first flat, it was a mansion. Like, it was absolutely ridiculously huge, and it was $140 a week for rent, and we're still paying that now, which is just so ridiculously cheap for what you get in Palmy.
Absolutely. I'm in one of the nicest suburbs. I've got an ensuite, got a spa bath, all that, got power and Wi-Fi included, a fortnightly cleaner, and it's like $210. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds fabulous.
You need a flat.
That's really good.
And house prices in Palmy are dropping a little bit, as they are across the country. And as I said earlier, we have had first years buy houses during their first year. I know people get anxious about interest rates, but as someone in my 60s who's been paying a mortgage since I was in my 20s, the first mortgage I had 22% interest. Because it was in the 80s at the end of the Muldoon price freeze, which most of you probably don't know anything about, but it was really hard to get finance. And we thought we were made when we were able to drop our mortgage rate to a 14% interest rate. So the message I think that I want to give people who are looking at potentially settling in Palmy for the longer term and wanting to buy houses, you have to consider an interest rate across the lifetime of your mortgage. So in my lifetime of having a mortgage, we've gone from a high of 22 down to a low of something like 2.5. So I guess if you're looking at a long-term lifetime investment in a property, mortgages will come and go, but Palmy will still remain a relatively affordable city, particularly compared to some of our larger cities like Auckland and Wellington and Waikato, Hamilton, and Tauranga for that matter.
And your transport costs are a lot less here.
Yeah,
Put that into your mortgage instead.
So this map shows the other side of the city from the hospital, so literally the other side, and you can still get to work for a 7:30 handover by getting out of bed at 7 a.m.
Yeah, I don't pay for parking, and I'm
pay for
5-minute walk in max to hospital on the street is all good.
Yesterday was a bit of a problem. You don't have an umbrella.
Oh,
Yeah, if you're going to park on the street, and I do the same actually, I just park in Featherston Street every day, but it pays to have an umbrella at work and an umbrella in your car, so you've always got one in either place, because yesterday morning started beautiful and it was pouring with rain by the end of the day. So, some of the things that RMOs have said about being here. It's an easy city to live in, very little traffic, collegial, which both Regan and Mania have reiterated, good food, really good housing, both renting and to buy, good teaching program, good opportunities to grow clinically. Practical procedures are easy to come by, so you get good opportunities to learn some of those. The RMO unit is quite new and still looks pretty good. And, we think We want our RMOs to stay here as long as they can, but we absolutely appreciate that for many of you, your training programs will mean that you can't do an entire training program in Palmerston North. There's a few where you can do most of it, and if we can get consultant liaison psychiatry, you'll be able to do all of psychiatry in Palmy. But most of the training programs you're going to need to move away. But we feel that our district gives you a really good start. You get really good opportunities, and as I said earlier, you get opportunities to step into non-training registrar positions for things like surgery and orthopaedics and those sorts of areas where the non-training roles you give you good exposure to set you up well for getting onto training programs. And it's good to find, it's easy to find, I think you guys probably might be a little bit early in your careers, but if you have got a training program that you're keen to get on, the SMOs are really happy and keen to mentor our people. A really good example of that for us has been radiology. We've had quite a unique position the last 2 years, which unfortunately won't be available next year, but we'd like to think maybe we can offer again in the future, where we've had a house officer in medical imaging, and we've had very successfully, we've had 2 of the house officers who were in those positions for a quarter last year got onto training for 2023, and we've got 2 more who've just interviewed for radiology registrar positions and are hoping if they don't get on for a mid-year intake that they will get on for a 2024 intake. And what they've found is that because they're working closely with our radiologists, they've just been able to grow and develop and learn a lot more about medical imaging than they would have in a different role. But I would say that that's equally the same. We've got one of our house officers who's showing a real interest in radiation oncology. So when she was in radiation oncology last quarter, she was able to go to some of the planning sessions. She was going to clinics. So, you know, there's opportunities when you find the area that you're passionate about to also find both registrar and SMO mentors who will support you to get onto the training program and give you the opportunities to learn and develop so that you can get onto the training programs that you want to get onto.
And every year, Regan and Mani, I won't have been to it yet because it hasn't happened, we do have a careers event and we get a really good turnout of SMOs and also training registrars, usually far in excess of the number of house officers that come along, but it's a really good opportunity to meet a few people, and then you can put some faces to names if you haven't already bumped into them on the wards, and all of those people sort of put their names out there to say, if you're interested in my specialty, then please come and have a chat. I'm more than happy to help. And I remember I had an intern, I think it was only last year, who right from the word go was really keen on an oncology career, and managed in second year to do some really heavily oncology based runs. So I think did haematology, radiation oncology, medical oncology and hospice.
Yeah.
And so did all of those runs in second year, loved them all, and has had to leave Palmerston North unfortunately for a year or 2. But I wouldn't be surprised if they came back with us having a tertiary oncology centre here. So lots of opportunities.
And there's always some bad things. Regan alluded to that before compared to Christchurch.
You adjust quickly, though.
Yeah.
They are working on the systems, but it's like anything, good things take time.
And it's interesting saying not a bustling New Zealand city, but it's what you make of it. I really do think the opportunities are here, and they're kind of easier to get. I grew up in Palmerston North since I was 2 years old. I lived here. I went away for 20 years to do various degrees and other work and things. Never thought I'd come back to Palmerston North, but when I did, I don't know why I hadn't come back earlier. Everything is within a drive of what you want, like Christine said earlier, the beaches, the large cities like Wellington, the beautiful vineyards over in Wairarapa and Hawke's Bay, and the ski fields and the lake. There's so much you can do, and then you can have a nice, quiet, easy week as well while you're here.
And it's your turn now to ask some questions.
Seems like we don't have questions so far from our participants. It seems like you are able to provide everything, all information, very detailed. Thank you very much for that. I just want to raise one question on behalf of the applicant. Sometimes I get a lot of emails, I got a lot of inquiries regarding what basically is your, I know that CV is very important for you guys, but they usually ask, do you have a particular competencies, or do you have a particular factor or aspect that you look for into an applicant whenever you're doing the ranking and assessment and ranking?
So I just didn't quite catch what your question was. What did you?
What particular factor what is your major consideration whenever you're doing applicant assessment and ranking?
Yeah, so Janita and I might both answer this because we probably look at slightly different things because we come at it from a slightly different perspective. I guess from my perspective, it is good to know that people are genuinely thinking about Palmy and have got some reason why they want to come to Palmy. And that's why I say the application letter is really important, because that's your chance to say, hey, this is why I want to come to Palmy. You know, I grew up in Wanganui, but Wanganui's a little bit little. I want to come somewhere there's a bit more life, things to do outside of work, etc., and more opportunities. Those are the sorts of things we're looking at. But also, and I think this comes down to, you know, the wellness. We want to know that people do have some activities that they do outside of work. And that can be anything. And one of the things that I noticed over the years reading applications is, for some people, research is their hobby, you know? And so just because someone's got that they're doing research doesn't necessarily mean they haven't got work-life balance. But going home and doing some research or doing some study in a different field, one of our house officers is doing a law degree online at the moment. And so, you know, that's his hobby. So, well, that might not be what I would regard as a hobby if that's what interests you. So don't feel that you can't put those sorts of things down in your CV, because they're all relevant and important. Sometimes people ask about photos versus not having a photo. I think that's definitely a personal preference, but just be mindful of making it a professional photo, not that photo of you at your best mate's 21st when you're rolling drunk. We don't want those photos in your CV. And so I think that's the thing to think about, is that this is a professional CV you're putting together, so think about it from that lens. But also we, you know, as I said at the beginning, all of you come out with a medical degree. And so we want the CVs to, I guess, to reflect what are the other parts of you that make you an interesting person and a person that we would want to have join our team.
And I agree with that. I think reading the cover letters is the most interesting part of working through all of the applicants. Like Christine said, you've all got a medical degree. Some of you have done other things as well. Some of you are heavily into your research and various other things. But the cover letter, I don't know, it gives me a glimpse of you, and you know, it's nice to know if you've got connections to Palmerston North. Some people don't have a connection to Palmerston North, but they know someone who's been here, or they've talked to someone who has really sparked their interest in coming here. So just telling us a little bit about yourself, you know, you can get a sense from a cover letter about what people are passionate about and things like that, in terms of both work but also life in general, the things that make them the person that they are. So I think a good cover letter is definitely worth putting the time and effort into.
And just a little hint for when you're doing it, because it's my understanding that you can add a different cover letter for every district that you're applying to, but just do make sure you load the right one against each district, because it is always a little bit quirky when you get, I really want to go to Taranaki.
And that happens.
It does. So just take care with that. The other thing we sometimes get asked is Auckland grads versus Otago grads. Do we get Auckland grads? And yes, we do. Because we are part of the Wellington School of Medicine for Otago, that's where we get our trainee interns from predominantly. And so therefore, as a proportion of our PGY ones, more of them would be Otago graduates than would be Auckland graduates, but we've always got a few Auckland graduates. And again, because
they're not that bad.
And because it's a really collegial hospital, I don't get any sense that the Auckland grads feel like they're on the outer because the Otago grads don't want to talk to them. Now, everyone just mixes in together and gets on well. And I guess that's another really good part of our orientation week, is that you do, if you are an Auckland grad and so you don't know quite as many people as maybe the Otago grads too, you've got a really good chance during that week to get to know each other a bit better and start doing some socialising together and things. The other question which I didn't address is the couples. So again, we do rank couples. We're happy to have couples. As you'll know, with ACE, you do need to identify yourself as a couple. If you don't, then there is always that chance that you'll get ranked and matched to different hospitals. So do put yourself down and acknowledge that you're a couple if you are a couple. And we, as I say, we're happy to have couples. The other thing is that we are also happy to rank late starts, but again, a little bit like if you thought you wanted to do part-time, I think it does pay if you're if you know you're going to be a late starter, so not going to start till 2:45 or even maybe later, do contact us prior and just have a conversation, because that's the sort of thing it's really good to know. When we look at your application, we think, oh yes, that's right, I remember that person ringing me and explaining why they were going to be a late starter.
Okay, there's another question here. Question is, how many house officers are on each surgical and medical team?
Okay.
On the Gen Surge, there's a few teams with 2. Like there's 4 Gen Surge teams. 3 of them have 2 house officers, 1 of them have 3 house officers. And on medicine, there's typically only 1 house officer for each team, and I think there's 7 general ones, and then gastro, resp and cardio, so maybe like 10.
Yeah. On Gen Surge though, because the teams typically, there's quite a difference in numbers.
Yeah.
When we were on it, we were really good, like all 8 of us or 9 of us work together as one team essentially, so it made for a much more pleasurable time when you've got 30 patients on your list and you've got 100 things to do. Yeah, it's all manageable.
So far, that's all the questions that I have.
I need to go, because I'm actually having a long day. Always holding my pager.
Okay, well if there's no more questions, then that's fine. It's been lovely having you listen to us, and we look forward to you making contact with us if you've got more questions, either via Beth, or if you want to contact us directly, then that's all fine as well. And you're very welcome to come for a visit or organise a Zoom chat so that we can answer your individual questions as well.
Okay. Before we close, we just wanted to remind everyone that the registration closes on June 23, Friday. And what we mean by registration closes on June 23, it is everyone is expected to should have been able to send their reference requests before the cutoff closes. And then we would like also to reiterate that closure of the application is on July 7, 12 noon of New Zealand time. Employers will assess applications between July 18 until August 12. Match results will be emailed to applicants directly on August 28, and successfully matched applicants are set to start on January 15, 2024. And for all our attendees who attended our webinar today, if you're still interested to watch other webinars, incoming webinars, you just go and navigate to the ACE RMO website and register to whatever employers you are keen to attend to. And I would like to really thank you guys, our panelists, for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. All details are really there. And maybe that's the reason why we didn't really get much of the questions in our question and answer function. It's because everything has been provided. Thank you very much. And I also would like to say good luck to all the applicants for their application for this year, for the incoming intake. So thank you guys. And yeah, that's it. We're closing now the webinar. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.